Plymouth Argyle boss Derek Adams calls into question the use of GPS trackers by Wickham. This was from September 12th, 2015, and we did mention this was mentioned in results analysis in terms of the stoppers, but Derek Adams has highlighted his safety concerns over the GPS trackers that were worn by Wickham Wanderers players in their 2-1 defeat against Plymouth Argyle at Adams Park. The Pilgrims boss does not believe the equipment should be allowed by the football authorities. GPS, Global Positioning System, trackers can measure the distance ran by players as well as their speed and also monitor their heart rate. It is another example of the increasingly scientific approach to football, even at League 2 level. A strap is put around the body of a player with the GPS tracker positioned on their back, and it can stick out from underneath their shirt. Adams spotted Wickham were using them in the tunnel before the teams came out for the start of the match. He raised the issue with referee Tom Robinson, who then spoke to Wickham boss Gareth Ainsworth about it. The kickoff was delayed for 6 minutes as Wickham officials printed a copy of an email from the Football League giving them permission to wear the GPS trackers. That was shown to Robinson, and only then was the official from West Sussex prepared to let the game get underway. Despite the clarification, Adams believes that GPS trackers are as much a hazard as rings and necklaces which cannot be worn by players in matches. Adams said the equipment was sticking out the back. There was a bulge in someone's jersey, and I asked the referee, is that allowed? No jokes about the bulge in the jersey. Anyway, I wasn't aware that it was allowed, and Wickham, provided a document to say that it was. Adams continued, he said, I don't think it should be allowed. It's a hard piece of equipment under the back of someone's jersey. Somebody could head it and injure themselves, or someone's finger could get caught in it. There are a number of things that can go wrong. Somebody could get choked if they are pulled too hard. I have seen them used in pre-season, but I haven't seen it in a league game. I didn't ask them for the GPS trackers to be taken off. I just wanted clarification. I'm not sure what the ruling is. I just asked a question and nobody could provide me with an answer at that time. The email provided by Wickham was enough for Robinson to get the game started, but Adams suggested he was still not satisfied with the reasoning, even though the referee was. But anyway, the first clue as to the reason for the delayed kickoff came actually on the day from Wickham's official Twitter account. So it is one of them ones where the reason why we mention that is because the high-tech GPS gizmo Liverpool used to ensure Gerrard Suarez and co are fit enough for the new season. This is from back in July 25th, 2013. Pre-season used to provide an opportunity for players to re-engage with football away from too much physical scrutiny. Matches were low-key affairs where little notice will be taken of a sprint cut short, a lack of distance covered, or a heart rate remaining sedate. But those days are gone. Now, an omnipotent fitness system can measure all the data a coaching team desires and highlight those individuals who are not meeting targets. Steven Gerrard at the time lifted up his shirt during Liverpool's win over Melbourne Victory to reveal he was wearing a Stat Sports Viper unit, a GPS system that collects a multitude of statistics on speed, distance, heart rate, dynamic stress loads, accelerations and decelerations. It is a sophisticated piece of kit that has revolutionized how performances in pre-season are assessed and is also used throughout a campaign to tailor training schedules and pick up early on injuries. Premier League champions Man United, their neighbours Man City, as well as Arsenal, Liverpool, Tottenham, Everton, West Ham, Norwich, Southampton, Sunderland, Swansea, Aston Villa, Cardiff and Crystal Palace all subscribed to the software, all but at the time 6 top flight teams. England's national side used the product along with Juve, Galatasaray and also Barcelona as well. It was developed with rugby in mind, but it's a case of obviously now it's football. Now, taking the form of the Stat Sports system of a small ergonomic pod, the weight of just 2 AA batteries, the Viper fits on a player's back in a pouch supplied by the tight-fitting vest. So there's that way around it. Each pod has a list of components including 4 processors, a state-of-the-art GPS module, a 3D accelerometer which determines direction as well as speed, a 3D gyroscope that locates balance and orientation, a 3D digital compass, a long-range radio and heart rate receiver as well. Now, basically, various parameters are measured and calculated 100 times per second, meaning almost 250,000 numbers every minute can be analysed from a team of 11 players. Data is also collected for storage and streamed live to coaching staff sitting at laptops for up to 2 pitches away, vital if in-play changes need to be made. Now, the beauty of Viper's channeling mechanisms mean that such statistics are 99% accurate, even in a stadium of 90,000 people using phones and Wi-Fi gadgets, which can interfere with other similar systems. Now, it is a case of there was at the time a grey area over whether Vipers are allowed in competitive games due to FIFA rules, and the governing body is looking into, or were at the time, in terms of whether they needed to make a decision over usage and whether that needs to be made. But it is one of them ones where basically it has. There is a little more to this, because Friday, August 7th, 2015, from Wearable.com. Picture the scene. World Cup final. It's the World Cup final, and it's gone to penalties. Rooney, all right, we can dream, but Rooney steps up to take the deciding kick, the weight of a nation on his shoulders. Seeing the expression on his face is one thing, but imagine seeing his heart rate escalate, the speed of his run-up, and how hard he strikes the ball in real time. Sounds like the kind of info you'd get playing FIFA 16, but it could well be the future of football, unprecedented in the Premier League. For years now, football players have been wearing tracking devices in training so coaches can see who's in tip-top condition and who's been burning the candle at both ends, but so far the devices haven't been allowed during competitive play. The only wearable that is permitted in the referees is the referee's watch that buzzes to let him know a goal has been scored. This means football has lagged behind other sports like rugby, Aussie rules, and American football, all of which use wearables to enhance the sport. The NFL actually announced last year, 2014, that it will be tracking players and sending the data on player speeds, runs, exertion, and fatigue exclusively to broadcasters for fans' enjoyment. So there's that end of it. But the level of in-game data is unprecedented in the Premier League, but it could be about to change. The International Football Association Board, IFAB, the body in charge of the laws of the game, has already discussed allowing the devices to be used during match play. Obviously relating back to Plymouth this week. It could rule on it before last season, this current season is actually finished. It let women's team use wearables during the recent Algarve Cup, and as well as in training, Premier League teams currently use wearables in pre-season friendlies. But in terms of what it would mean for the game, Jim McKeaney, the head of marketing for Stat Sports, behind the Viper Pod, which we just mentioned, has said it brings fan engagement to the next level. You could launch in-stadium apps so fans can engage more with what's happening on the field and see each player's data. Clubs could develop their own apps for fans too. To be able to see Messi and say he's running at 9.3 meters per second compared to someone who's running only 8.7, it's the next level for fans. But it wouldn't just be a boon for fans, it could gamify the sport even more. We could see gaming companies taking interest in this information for a whole host of reasons, albeit rightly or wrongly. Said Chris Barnes, head of sports science at West Bromwich Albion and a member of the British Association for Sport and Exercise Sciences. So pretty soon you could be putting bets on how hard someone is working. This is purely me postulating, but it seems the way the gaming side of the business is going, so I've no reason to doubt that they will come on board the minute that we're able to broadcast quality data. Now that's an interesting one there. At the moment, stats are compiled by a combination of on-pitch sensors and video footage from companies like Opta and Prozone. Rather than being competitors, the different technologies could complement each other, providing more comprehensive stats. Now, it is one of them ones where the devices are so advanced they can be calibrated to each player and position. There's even one for the keeper. The Catapult Optimi G5 was developed specifically for goalkeepers. It's used in over 400 sports organizations around the world. With the outfield players, we're interested in how far they go, how fast they go, how many sprints they perform, and the cardiovascular side of things. Whereas with goalkeepers, we're more interested in the number and magnitude of diving activities. What we've done is we've spent a bit of time looking at the data coming from the inertial sensors, and we've created fingerprints which identify these goalkeepers' physical reactions. So now we've got a unit which is bespoke and unique to their needs. That's the big leagues. What about at the grassroots level? Last summer, Adidas launched the My Coach smart ball, which gives you feedback on your kicks via an app on your smartphone. Experts think wearables and connected devices like this are becoming such an accepted part of people's lives, they could make football more appealing to youngsters. We're looking at a generation of young people more used to having multimedia platforms at their fingertips, said Dr. Andy Harlan, Director of Sports Technology Institute at Loughborough University. These kinds of devices bring football in line with what children are seeing in the rest of their lives. They're used to having every aspect of their lives linked into their smartphones, so if football isn't, maybe it becomes old hat. Now, Oculus Rift has come into this as well. Google Glass and Oculus Rift have immense potential for the sport. Man United's manager Louis van Gaal used both at the 2014 World Cup to let his Dutch players relive match situations from a different player's perspective, which is extremely interesting. Almost kind of virtual reality. We can't wait for the next day when we can switch between players' viewpoints at the touch of a button, like a next generation player can. Obviously, that's going to all take a bit of time to come in, but it is one of them ones. I mean, imagine. Apparently, there's footage of Carlos Tevez wearing a GoPro, so it's one of them ones. Imagine that kind of stuff as well. But you know what? Coming right back, this kind of stuff, this wearable tech, is clearly the future of football. And if it's a little thing on someone's back, it's under their shirt. And obviously it's strapped tight as well, not uncomfortably tight, but it's strapped tight. So I would see it as Plymouth's manager moaning about it for safety reasons. No, I don't think there's much of a leg to stand on in terms of that, because obviously they would have had extensive testing, and also the fact that the football league have allowed it as well. So it sounds like Wickham are trying to get an advantage where no one else has done it yet. So more power to them. It's like when Watford were taking advantage of the loan system and they had 9 players from Udinese at once. It's one of them was they took advantage of a loophole, and then it was closed afterwards after people moaned about it because probably they didn't think about it first. So it's one of them ones. I can understand complaining about it on safety grounds, but it is on someone's back. It's a little bit of a bulge, yeah. But at the end of the day, who's gonna header your back? It's one of us. Oh, someone could hit their head on it. Who's gonna header your back? And if someone's actually pulling the wearable tech as well, then that essentially means that someone's pulling your shirt, and that's cheating anyway. So that would be where I would come from as an amateur league player. It'd be interesting to have it at grassroots level for the little, especially for the youngers, because of the integration with technology and that. But I think that might be a bit much yet. But it is one of them ones where it would be an interesting thing for youngsters to go, hey, look how far I ran today. Oh, look how many touches of the ball I had today. It could potentially help coaches assess who's working hard and who isn't. So I mean, you could have that club wide as well. So it's integrating technology and football, and having GPS trackers. And imagine let's say a player was prone to injury. Let's say, for argument's sake, a player had bad knees, and unbeknownst to anyone else, his running style isn't helping. Now, if you had a GPS tracker, on him, and if that running style was stopping him running as much as he could or working as hard as he could, then imagine a GPS tracker with a gyroscope in it, monitoring their proprioception, which is essentially balance. For those who have had physio before, you would have heard that word before. But imagine being able to monitor someone's proprioception and basically tailor a gym program to be able to help players adjust their running style, so it's easier on the knees, it's easier on the joints, it's easier on the lumbar region. Then in theory, that's a good thing, not only for clubs, but that's good for players' health as well. That's where I would come from as a player on this. Safety reasons, I don't know. I think that's a bit of a cheap excuse, because these things, as I said, these things are the size of 2 AA batteries, so they're actually very, very small. So it's one of them ones. I mean, with the kind of stat sport stuff that we see in pre-season, at first I thought it looked like players were wearing sports bras. But it's like, it's based on that kind of design, because ergonomically it fits better. But it's gonna be, I think this kind of thing where you can track players for the computer gaming industry, it can make that more immersive. For the betting industry, all right, fine, people could bet on how far someone's gonna run, but everyone bets on almost everything anyway. How many cards, when someone's gonna score, how many corners. So it's kind of just the next logical step, really. So there's a lot of potential in this, in my view. I mean, Gman Gezzie, what do you reckon before we throw this out? Because we've got Darrell David on the line as well, so it's going to be interesting to hear his views in a minute as well. But Gav, Gezzie, what do you reckon?
G-Man, do you want to go first, or do you want me to jump in first?
Yeah, I'll jump on first. I'll be quite short there. But just to go with your original argument, Liam, I can really understand why the manager in question basically questioned why the players were wearing, the wearable technology, and why he might have had concerns. Because at the end of the day, the only reason why there isn't any cause concerns at the moment is because no accidents have happened. And like, big sports, big money industries, no one's really concerned until a big incident happens, and then there's cause for concerns, and then they start looking into, precautions and procedures. So at the moment, yeah, it might work and be a just cause, but we just don't know how safe it is until an accident really does happen. But as for you're saying, going on into the actual technology itself and its uses, totally agree with you. It's definitely gonna open up new industries, and you named a few there with, especially me having worked in corals before. Great shout on the sort of stats predictions and betting on that. People do absolutely bet on anything. I remember when working, someone actually tried to bet on when Michael Jackson would die.
Mate, allow it.
Mate, the people do say some ridiculous things, and you can actually find them in the system or ring up and try and quote these things. So,
well, people bet on professional wrestling, even though it's predetermined. I don't think you should be allowed to bet on something that's predetermined anyway, because you can get spoilers. But leaving that one.
But in terms of the technology now, with the sporting and the game sort of vibe, yeah, it works hand in hand. Games, simulations, as Gezzie touched on it before with Football Manager, Football Manager have basically been simulating this sort of thing already in terms of, having these stats on screen, where you're playing the match and you literally can see all the stats of your players, passes, dribbles, running, that's been played out. So it's natural that it will go down the same route on live football TV, and even BT TV, they do it themselves. They've got these stats live on screen. You can watch game and the stats are live there on the screen on the app. So it's quite ingenious, to be honest. You're just watching the match. You can see, shots taken, fouls, all those sort of things live there on your screen to the side of the game being played. But in terms of it dropping down into the lower leagues, this is where I just think technology like that's just wasted. In the lower leagues, if it is gonna, if they are, I just feel money could be pushed into different directions if they are going to do anything for the lower leagues and market anything for the lower leagues in terms of helping and improving the game, or giving back to the game. I just think it's a bit wasted.
Yeah, there's bigger fish to fry at grassroots level. There are legitimately bigger fish to fry. And in terms of problems at grassroots level, stuff like facilities, this money would be better funded into that. But maybe the money generated from kind of developing these apps can be put back into that. Maybe. I'm just saying. I'm playing devil's advocate with it.
Yeah. But yeah, generally, that's just the gist of my views on that. To be honest, like I said, I understand the concerns of the manager. But we just don't know until an accident happens.
No, true. I mean, Gezzie Fizzle, did you want to jump in as well?
Yeah, and I'll just piggyback on what the G-Man was saying, and I think, in terms of safety and precautions, he's right in that at the moment, the reason why there's no real furore about it is, well, no one's been hurt. But does it actually have to take someone being hurt before we put in place some kind of precautionary and advisory measure? Now, in my opinion, it shouldn't have to take that long. You shouldn't have to wait for that point. It makes no sense, right? So, for me, if the league are going to allow the use of it, which they have done, then there has to be, enough considerable testing under certain scenarios to make sure, for example, that if there is any sort of collision, that the player colliding with the player that's wearing the tech, if they aren't wearing tech, and even if they are, is it going to be susceptible to any sort of significant injury? So all of that has to be considered. But in terms of the applications, I think there's two main ones for me personally. It's to do with squad training. I personally wouldn't use it in games, but for squad training, that is absolutely huge in terms of monitoring players' performance. So currently, similar tech is being used to monitor players' fitness levels. But then if, you want to look at, say, for example, how a player is playing in a certain position.
Yeah.
In terms of exertion, touches on the ball, distance covered, all those other things, I think that's very useful. So if you're trying to prove a point to say, for example, to an out-and-out number 9, that's more of a fox in the box. But look, we don't need you to run around so much. Yeah? You just need to stay between here and here. If you stay here and you move in this particular fashion to go here, 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 and here, within this area, this is where you're going to get your goals from. Right? And the reason why we can prove that to you is when we look at 2 weeks ago in training, when we asked you to do that, you scored this many goals from this many touches from this position, this position, this position. So that's absolutely huge in terms of having a explanatory piece of information to explain to players why it's important to play a role in a particular way, for example. So I think that could be one of the uses in terms of training, and that's even more useful for young players who, as we say, are used to looking at statistics and how those statistics are interpreted in terms of representation of how a player's role should be fulfilled in, for example, Football Manager, FIFA, Pro Evolution Soccer, so on and so forth, right? But in terms of gaming and betting, I think that's absolutely huge in terms of the implications of that. I think a couple of years ago, FIFA had a mode called Adidas Live Seasons. I don't know if they have it anymore. I think it may have been removed. But basically, with that game mode, you were able to go back and play the week's fixtures from a certain division.
Yeah.
So I think it was like all of the top divisions across Europe. So with that now, and the statistical technology, and having all the stats, you can faithfully recreate those games. So in the games that you don't play and try to change the result, they are recreated exactly as they were because they have the statistics to back it up.
Yeah, but then that said, that makes gaming more immersive, even more so.
That's what I mean. And then, of course, if you're playing to change that result, right, the team that you're actually coming up against now is a proper representation of the team that played.
Yeah.
So you now have to do something totally different to what actually happened, because that's going to be the only way to beat this team. Right? And if you're not cottoned on to what they were doing in the actual game, if you're going to go and play the recreation of it, you're likely to get beaten even worse by the same team. If that makes sense in terms of how they'll go and implement that. But in terms of betting, I think it's huge. One other area where it kind of crosses over between betting and gaming is fantasy football.
Yeah.
I think the implications of something like that is absolutely huge, especially in terms of live updates of your players. And if they add certain elements to the scoring, so for example, if they happen to cover over a certain amount of distance, this is however many percent of a point, so on and so forth. If they record so many touches, it's this many percent of a point, so on and so forth. So that kind of information adds even more to that. And as I say, the live real-time updates, which the NFL do for fantasy football, in terms of touchdowns, yards received, yards gaining the ground, yards after the catch, yards after contact, passing yards, defensive plays in terms of balls swatted out the air, interceptions, run stuffs, so on and so forth. All of those kind of statistics are included in terms of if you want to know how well a particular player is doing, or a particular unit in the case of defense. So I think the potential to add to that and go into even more detail, but obviously related to football, is huge. And then, of course, So each of those individual factors, again, if you want to open up betting markets, and I'm sure they would want to, and I'm sure they would want to bet on those things, that's something else to then add to that in terms of potential revenue and in their expansion for that information.
Yeah. I mean, see, that's an interesting, because at the end of the day, I said, like I said, there are other sports already using it, and this is the thing where football has been slow to adopt technology, but certain types of technology could actually improve the game because they're getting more information. This is not affecting, for me personally, this is not affecting how the game is played in terms of breaking it up and like having video tech for offsides and all that kind of crap. It's not affecting the pureness of the game. It's just helping teams get more data on their players to get the best out of their players to improve the game. That's where I would see it. I mean, Mike Harneman has mentioned before we asked Darrell David his opinion, because that's very interesting from a referee's perspective. Mike Harneman, I'd like what you read out in the Skype, what you put in the Skype chat was actually very interesting. Would you like to read that out?
Yeah, I will do. Yeah, basically, I think it's definitely going to come in handy in certain situations for players that have some kind of underlying issue as well that they might not necessarily know about. Obviously, there was the likes of Mitchell Cole, who passed away. Fabrice Mirambo, who had the problems as well, and the Bafétimbi Gomez as well, that kind of situation. The likes of Michael Timlin and Dembele, who had the big head clash in the playoff game between Stevenage and Southend last year as well. So, to actually look at it on that perspective, it will get kind of medical teams and medical people on the scene a lot quicker, hopefully.
No, that's definitely. I mean, that's one of them ones where that is actually a very, very interesting point. That is actually, I like that as a point, because it is a case of if you could imagine, picture this scenario. Picture this scenario. It'd be a case of imagine someone's ducking along the football pitch. Let's say Bafétimbi Gomis, and his heart rate starts dropping, and it starts dropping drastically. You can instantly say, referee. You can legitimately get the referee to stop the game and say, this guy's heart rate has dropped dangerously. If it drops below a certain amount of beats per minute, you could literally flag down the ref and be like, right, his heart rate has dropped down very, very drastically. So we need to do something. We need to do something about this. So it's one of them ones, that early kind of thing could save someone's life potentially. But I mean, you know what? Just want to ask, Darrell David, are you with us tonight?
I am.
Yeah. Welcome once again to PT Live. And you know what? It is a case of, want to ask your opinion on this issue about wearable tech. What is your view on what happened with Plymouth and Wycombe, and also about wearable tech in general? Are you a fan of it, being that you're a referee?
Okay, as a referee, many referees use the technology as it is now, these sorts of running things and stuff to track their sort of movements on the pitch. A lot of referees do that. I've been out with many referees this season and last season who use GPS trackers and all of that to track where they move on the pitch. And do you know what? It helps them a lot, because they realise, right, okay, this is the patrol path that I've got to use. I'm not doing that as of now. How can I improve it? And it notes everything that you'd want to know as a referee. And I think that's important. For players, I think it's important to find the right balance on where what to use, how they're going to use it, and ECT. I don't think it's great to sort of have this other bit of a GPRS tracker tracking, like, how far they're under this, that, because you can do that already. I mean, it's not as if when Sky Sports and BT Sports and Match of the Day, they go, oh, he ran 15 kilometres today, this and that. It can already be seen. So I think it's important to find a thing. But definitely the health thing you were talking about just now, that's a big one. I think that should be implemented. But I mean, referees already use it as it is, and I think the manager's just going a bit over the top. Maybe he's a bit frustrated that his team don't have them, and he feels that that they should have it rather than just only one team. But I think really they should implement it all over the leagues, because it will engage a lot of fans, players, and this and that. But I do think it's something that it's already happening, especially in the refereeing world. It's already happening, so it could just be drafted into the footballing world.
So, you know, I think that's actually a very interesting opinion on it, and like it's interesting that you've kind of got two sides of it, from the referee side and as a person as well. It's like, I mean, I said I think it could really benefit the game. But it's one of them ones. It is a case of, it would obviously, technology, with any technology, you need to do it in moderation, and that would be the interesting thing. Can you do it in moderation? So I very much am. I am a fan. I actually am a fan of the whole wearable tech thing personally. As a player, I think as a player it would be interesting to know how far you've ran and basically what impact you've had. Basically what impact you've had on the game. I mean, have you covered as much ground? Have you stayed on your feet most of the time? Because sometimes you get such tunnel vision on the game, and I think coaches will be able to kind of really use it and be like, right. And we'll be like, right, cool. This player is a bit wasted here. Let me try him in this position and see if that works, and see if that works better for him, in terms of, because he likes to make these kinds of runs. So if you've got a winger that keeps dropping inside, and it's kind of like, you could balance it out. I don't know. I just think it's a very interesting thing. But wearable tech, I definitely think, is the future of football. I definitely think.
Just a question on that, though, Lee.
Yeah.
Not for the natural lazier players like the Dima to Berbatovs, yeah, and players of that caliber who, you know, they coast around the pitch. The impact isn't as how would you say courageous as some other players like the Messis or foregone runners, where they're just running up and down like madmen, and, you know, not even looking like they're breaking a sweat. But on those sort of players, wouldn't that be an endangerment? Wouldn't that be an endangerment to their game? Wouldn't that be an endangerment? Like, for instance, football's a psychological game, and it's also about results.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm a manager and I've started to hook myself into this technology, and then all I'm concerned about is how fit my players are and how they're moving across the pitch, and how much energy and activity they're giving into the game, whereas I don't really take myself out of that and look on, you know, what they actually provide to the team. Because some of those sort of laser players, the ones that don't look as energetic, you know, they do their thing.
Yeah.
Sessions. You know,
but I think it's one of them ones where with the amount of information and the amount of tech,
players like that.
But I think with the amount of information, the amount of tech, what it would do is it would help managers potentially accommodate that kind of player better. If that player is naturally gifted enough that they don't have to do much, then you might be able to work around that person a little bit better. So like say having a centre midfield with, say, Jordan Henderson and Philippe Coutinho. Like, Coutinho, you know, is going to be the creative spark, but Henderson is going to be the worker and the runner. So it helps you it would help you accommodate better those players. Potentially. I'm devil's
but
pure devil's
advocate. Also blind you as a manager. Because you're just effectively relying on stats to tell you on a forthcoming game. Yeah, so you're using last week's stats to try and predict what's going to happen in tomorrow's game. Whereas, really and truthfully, isn't it more, you're meant to be more of an instinctive, a manager's meant to be more instinctive and have that feeling and know that, you know, the team that they're putting out yeah, instinctively rather than statistically, is the right thing.
In theory, in theory, I agree with you. But then in practice, you've got everyone else using the data anyway to get the most out of their players. So if everyone else is using this data and these statistics to get the best out of their players, why not jump on? I mean, it for me, it would be basically, it wouldn't be a hindrance, it would be a help. Yeah. That would be where I would look at it. That would be where I would look at it. So, yeah.
But just to piggyback on something that Gman was saying, and I know I'll keep it short because we have to move on to other points and other topics and so on and so forth, right? But in terms of what you were saying about the players that may not necessarily exert themselves as much, right? Using that in comparison to, as you say, a player who, you know, may run up and down like an absolute madman, right? Just because they don't, what this doesn't factor in for me in terms of the raw data is the economy of movement, right? So sometimes you don't necessarily have to be herring all over the pitch to be effective, right? So what's one of the major criticisms of Wayne Rooney? That he likes to run around a little bit too much, and that sometimes if he actually stuck to certain areas of the pitch and tried to do a job there, he would be far more effective in the role that he's playing. Yeah. Right? So if you have a player, as you say, when you pointed out, like a Dimitar Berbatov, listen, the thing that was so good about Dimitar Berbatov, firstly, he doesn't actually look like he's trying that hard, right? But when you look at what he does with defective,
yeah,
that's why he has the goal scoring record that he's had, not just in Germany, not just in France, but also in England as well.
Yeah, but you got to remember, say, with this technology though, like I said, there's a goalkeepers one as well, so you can tailor it to positions.
Yeah,
and that's one of the obviously main things that coaches are going to rely on, that you can tailor it to different positions and say, right, I want this person to hit this target today. Let's see how close they get to the target. If they don't get to the targets, then you know you've got so much data, you know how to get them to that to help them become better at what they're doing. I said that would be my perspective on it. That would be my perspective.
And I think that use of it, that's what I was saying, for me, not so much during live games, but training, and especially the training of young players, the implications for the use of this technology, absolutely huge. Absolutely huge.
Yeah. I mean, it's gonna be interesting to see how much wearable tech gets implemented into the game.